Am I the a-hole for asking my dad's brother to walk me down the aisle instead of my dad? I, 28 female, am getting married in the winter. Me and my dad were very close when I was growing up. When I was aged 16, my parents divorced after 20 years of marriage. Now, I don't blame him for this, and from the information I have, I can confidently say it's my mom's fault they divorced. However, after the divorce, he completely ignored all 6 of his children. He didn't make any effort to keep in contact with any of us, and the last time we heard or spoke to him was the night of the separation. For the next 8 years, I was the main earner for my family and was more like a parent to my siblings. During this time, I didn't keep in contact with anybody from my dad's side of the family. I had the phone numbers of a couple of my aunties/cousins, but didn't really speak to them apart from the yearly birthday or Christmas message. I only really saw one cousin of mine regularly, and that was the cousin who was my 19 male brother's best friend growing up. We'll call him Rob. Around about 5 years ago, I had a big falling out with my mother in which I left the house. At this time, I asked Rob for his mother's number so I could ask her to get in touch with my father for me. She gets her husband, my uncle, to ask his brother if I can move in with him, and my dad agrees to let me stay with him, even though I hadn't spoken to him in 7 years at the time. Later on, when I arrived at his home, tells me I can't stay at his and to go stay at a hotel or something. I call my uncle crying, and he says I can come stay with them instead. It seems as though my dad had agreed when his brother had confronted him, but changed his mind when he had gone home to speak to his wife. For the next 2 years, I lived at my uncle's house and I consider his kids to be more like siblings now. My dad's siblings and cousins from that side of the family always meet up for gatherings multiple times a year, but I don't really communicate with my dad other than saying hello and goodbye at these gatherings. My uncle was there for me when even my own dad wasn't, and his family accepted me as their own, even though I'd barely spoken to them for 8 years at the time. My dad will be invited to the wedding, but I have asked my uncle to walk me down the aisle instead. He is happy I ask him, but is unsure if he wants to accept because he doesn't want to disrespect his older brother and walk his own daughter down the aisle in front of him. I feel as though my dad doesn't deserve to walk me down the aisle as he didn't have the backbone to stand up to his own wife over his daughter. My uncle even told me he tried to justify himself to his siblings by saying, "They didn't try to keep in touch with me, so why should I look after her?" I'm not being funny, but as being a 16 female at the time and I was the oldest child as well, it wasn't my responsibility to. It was his. Am I the a-hole for asking my dad's brother to walk me down the aisle instead of him in front of him? Now for the top comments. Not the a-hole. You aren't entitled to walk a daughter down the aisle that you abandoned twice. Not the a-hole, but your uncle is also allowed to say no. The rift between him and his brother may not be worth it. Plus, he could be worried that it could cause unnecessary drama on your wedding day and ruin your wedding. Which it very well might. Honestly, at this point, I'd be walking down the aisle by myself if I were you. Not the a-hole. Your dad hasn't been in your life. You're asking someone who has. It's likely your dad will be hurt by this. If you chose to, you could explain the situation in a letter to him, and if you chose, open up the idea of trying to restore the relationship. But perhaps he needs some consequence. Not the a-hole. You can tell your uncle that there's no reality where his older brother will be walking you down the aisle. It's either he walks you or you walk alone. He gets to decide that it will cause him too much grief. But if you make it clear that there is no possibility that you will walk with your bio dad, you're definitely not the a-hole here. You took care of your siblings and cousins when your father wasn't around. You even tried to get in contact with him. I don't think he deserves to walk you down the aisle. It should be who you want, who respects you and you could trust. Best wishes for your marriage. Now for the next story. Am I the a-hole for uninviting one of my best friends to my wedding? Early last year, one of my college best friends told me that she was getting engaged before she told anyone else knew because she wanted to hire my mom as her wedding planner. A couple of days later, she got engaged and told all of our friends that my mom, a professional wedding planner, would plan her wedding. All good until that point. After a couple of meetings with my mom, Lucy stopped responding to my mom. And I noticed by WhatsApp group that she hired all my mom's vendors directly without even telling us. She chose June 2021 as her wedding date. I let that one go because I didn't want to ruin her wedding. Last November, I also got engaged and chose September 2021 as my wedding date to give our friends some time between the two weddings, especially because mine is out of town. Later on, I found out again by a group that she had postponed her wedding to the day after mine. Of course, I was furious, and I had no problem letting her know that time. She finally contacted me and explained that she had no money for the wedding in June, and the day after my wedding was the only available date this whole year in her venue. Again, that's what my mom showed to her, without a contract just because she was my friend. To be honest, I don't buy it. But now I'm the a-hole in our friends group because I uninvited her and was rude to her, and it was not her fault because she has no job. I still feel like she's not the kind of person you call your friend, and does not give me the energy I want to have in my wedding day. Am I the a-hole for this? Not the a-hole. Your mom took the time to plan everything for her, as it's her job, then she just contacted the vendors behind her back. That's already rude. Also, what was she trying to accomplish by moving the date? Reusing your decorations? Having people come to your wedding and just stay one day longer so she doesn't have to cover any costs for guests? I don't get it. Yep. And then she can steal all the designs Opie's mom does for daughter's wedding. Reminder that Opie's wedding is out of town and not at the same venue as former best friend. If anything, this was a ploy to make the friends choose between which wedding they want to attend. And if they wanted to attend both, they'd have to not have too much fun at Opie's wedding. Traveling while hungover surely sucks. And ultimately have to likely leave Opie's wedding early to be able to travel back in time for friend's wedding. But if she had no money for June, how's she going to come up with money just 3 months later? Not a a-hole. That's what I was wondering. Vendors and venues are expensive and she has no job. Not sure what miracle she is expecting they're going to want to be paid. She is planning a wedding she can't afford. Your friend was already the a-hole when she used your mom's services and then went behind her back. Not an a-hole. I'd explain that to your friend group. Not the a-hole. Lucy is clearly a leech in this situation from what you've said. I would do everything possible to either immediately distance yourself or do it over time so it's one of those sadly we grew apart things. I'm not sure how many vendors/locations/services overlap, but I would call yours and tell them a bit about the situation. As someone suggested, she might try to mooch off you and tell the vendors you said it was okay to reuse certain items or ask for a discount because they'd already there. You can tell the people you hired that someone you thought was a friend changed their original wedding date to the day after yours, and you do not give permission for anything specifically for your wedding to be reused for theirs. The beauty of that is, you don't even have to say names. If she used the same people and were booked from June to September, they'll know instantly who it was. Or even if she decides to hire them now, that date and any money-saving request will raise red flags and help them avoid her if they want. I could be reading/imagining this wrong, but I think Lucy might be diva bridezilla, and no one wants to deal with that. Next story. Am I the a-hole for getting upset at something I had originally said is okay regarding my wedding? Hello. I was supposed to get married last year, but due to the obvious issue, it had to be cancelled and we moved it to this year. Finally, my area is doing well in terms of the virus. The cases are lower every day, the vaccination process is going well, and the regulations are relaxed, and everything is almost back to normal. I'm getting married in a month, and I couldn't be happier. I have a no-kids wedding, and I had notified everyone that it's a no-kids wedding, so they could tell me whether they'll be able to attend or not. I said it's fine if you can't find a babysitter for the day, and I won't judge if you can't afford to have a sitter or you can't find one and you won't be able to attend. I just said I'd like to be notified at least 2 weeks prior to the wedding, because that's when I'm gonna give the list of the guests to the venue. 4 of my friends and a cousin of mine called me earlier this week to tell me they won't be able to attend because they can't find or afford a babysitter. They wished me well on the wedding. I got very upset. They knew for an entire year that I was planning a no-kids wedding, and they couldn't figure something out, which tells me they don't actually care about me. The phone calls of the 4 friends were separate and happened in the span of 2 days, yet my cousin actually visited me to give me the wedding gift and tell me she won't be able to attend. My cousin was the last one to tell me, and I went off. I told her how I feel like my wedding is not important to them if they can't figure out how to leave their kids alone for 1 day. My cousin then said how I'm being unfair, because I had previously said it's fine if we can't attend because of the kids for whatever reason, and then I said that I'm being notified last minute. And she pulled the argument that they notified way before the 2 weeks notice before the wedding, and that they notified more than a month before it. I told my cousin to leave my house because I needed to think. I called my mom to ask for advice and also consulted my fiancé. But they both told me that I'm overreacting because the girls met my wishes and notified 1 month prior, and how I was the one that said it's not a problem if you can't attend because of the kids. I said I felt it was unfair that they'd put their kids above my wedding when it was just for 1 night. And my mom scolded me and said I'm being too entitled for expecting people to put their kids' needs or their financial issues aside because I'm getting married. And that my wedding might be the most important thing to me, but it's not the most important thing to everyone else. And if someone has to attend 10 weddings a year, it's natural they won't be able to meet the needs of every single one. So, am I the a-hole for getting upset at something I previously said I wouldn't mind? You are the a-hole because of this attitude. I said I felt it was unfair that they'd put their kids above my wedding. If there is someone out there that doesn't put their kids over your wedding, or any wedding, then they are crappy parents. I understand why you want a kid-free wedding, and that is your right. The other side of that coin is that some people with kids won't come to the wedding for lots of reasons involving their kids. That is their right. You ask for a notice, and they were polite enough to give it to you. That line takes her from a-hole to bridezilla. Why not both? You're the a-hole. You said it was okay and gave them a deadline, and now you went back on that. Childcare is hard to keep, and often people won't know for sure if they have it until a week or 2 before an event. You've given no reason why you aren't the a-hole here, and every reason that you are. But it's her wedding. How could they not drop everything to be there on her day? You're the a-hole. You gave a deadline. They followed it. An invitation is an invitation, not a summon. With the pandemic, people's lives have changed, particularly financially. And it's been really tough on kids. It might be harder to find a babysitter because of other people's lives changing. Maybe they are not comfortable going to a big wedding due to COVID, and are just trying to say it's because of a babysitter because you had said that initially. Also, maybe you're just a bridezilla in general, and they're using this because they don't want to go. That last reason. Why do I get the feeling that's likely the real reason? You're the a-hole. Don't plan a no-kids wedding, and then throw a tantrum because people with kids can't attend. Last story is titled, Am I the a-hole for telling my dad I want nothing to do with his secret second family? My 19 female dad, 50 male, has been having a long-term affair with a woman for over a decade. Their relationship began while he was married to my mom, and he stayed with her even while he dated and was engaged to a different woman after my parents' divorce. I don't think his latest ex ever knew about her, but I'm not sure. She has a kid, although it isn't his, which I do believe. I knew about his affair long ago, and after a big fight, basically said I never want to hear about her again or have anything to do with it, and then I'd be fine. This went okay for a decent amount of time. He would go on work trips and all, but I never asked questions and he never shared. And I was honestly fine being in the dark about it. I never approved, and he knew this, but I let him live his life so long as I was never brought into it. He tells me today he has invited them out to visit. I still live at home right now, and would love for me to be polite while they're here. I told him absolutely not, that I would go to a friend's house for the duration of their visit, but I would not be seeing them at all. That woman caused a lot of traumas during my childhood, and aided in my parents' divorce, and I don't condone women who knowingly be the other woman. I never want to see her, and I made that clear. I said he can live his life as he wants, but I will not be dragged into that. He was pissed, went off on me saying it's his life, and I'm the child here so his day is what goes. He ended by saying to lose his number, and honestly that would be fine with me if he would throw away his actual child for this other family. I wanted nothing to do with that. Am I the a-hole for telling him a hard pass and playing happy family with his affair family? Not the a-hole. You do not have to let this man have his cake and eat it too. It's about time there's consequences for his selfish choices. Did he actually say lose his number? Wow. He is so callous and selfish to easily discard his family as well. cheats, then discards Opie. Yeah, Opie's father is a huge a-hole. I had narcissistic parents growing up and it was awful. Not today, Opie. I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Not today, Hall. I know he's your father, but honestly, do you really want this person in your life? This. I don't get why the other woman is persona non grata, but you're okay with Dad. He's the one who broke marriage vows. I'm by no means okay with what my dad has done and is actively doing. He is my dad, and sadly that complicates things, and I didn't want to lose my remaining parent if I could help it. We have a very rocky relationship. That is at the forefront. As for the woman, I do blame her as well. She was a family friend and knew my dad was married and had kids when they got together. She caused a lot of issues during my parents' marriage, with sending taunting messages to my mom, which caused arguments that I ended up in the middle of as a child. My dad was the married man, but she wasn't an innocent that was kept in the dark about the situation. I guess it's just easier to be totally no contact with her since I have no emotional connection to her at all, whereas it's harder with my dad because he and I do have that. Wow, your father is the massive a-hole, not you. I'm 100% with you. That's awful. I wouldn't want to see her either. Ever. She destroyed your childhood, and your father is appalling too, and you have tried and been very reasonable overall, ignoring his work trips, etc. But this is too much. But it's his home, and yep, his life, so you have few options. I'd find a way to move out, away from your father. It's disgraceful.